All right, guys. So, um, the general store was essential to daily life in the rural US during the 1800s because provided the supplies that the people living in nearby communities needed. Also, the store was a blank of information. A lot of people, what they do is they would stop at the blank and they would try to guess from the list of the words. That's again a big mistake because you actually have to know what you're reading, right? You must always read till the end of the paragraph. So now what you must do is you must continue. So people socializing at the store would share news. They would share news. They would also help spread the news. So that means that if you are going to go to the store, you will obviously get some news. And news qualifies as which of the following? Source, right? So the store was essentially a source of news or a source of information. So that was not too bad, right? I think the words are okay here. Okay, number two, for painter Jacob Lawrence, being blank was an important part of the artistic process. So we have to read till the end to know what is going on. Because he paid close attention to all the details in the neighborhood, Lawrence's artwork captured nuances and the beauty and vitality of the black experience. So he was paying close attention to details. Which of those four words would fit in that? B. All right. So far, look, the first five questions of the passage, no, are the vocab. The first five. So you only have 10 in the entire, as far as I saw in practice test, 10 at least. Okay. Former astronaut Ellen, whatever that is, says that although she doesn't have a definite idea of when it might happen, so she is not very sure about when this will happen, she blank that humans will someday need to be able to live in other environments. This conjecture, do you guys know what conjecture means? Okay, that's the problem here. So you guys don't know what that word means, okay, which might confuse you. It basically means an opinion based on incomplete information. So she has an opinion. So here, this word has to be about an opinion that's based on incomplete information. And she will probably think that humans will someday need to be able to live on other environments. So, which of the following four words is about opinion that's based on incomplete information? Speculates. She doubts that, but she just said that she thinks that humans will need to be able to live. Right? You don't say she doubts that they need to be able, right? Yeah. And also, if you're confused about doubt versus speculate, look at this. This conjecture informs her interest in future research about the moon. So she wants us to go outside. She's not doubting. She's just speculating. Or basically, she's not very sure. Right? But she thinks this will happen. So speculate means she thinks that the following will happen. Okay? 4. The parasitic daughter plant increases its reproductive success by flowering at the same time as the host plant it had latched on. In 2020, we have a scientist and his colleagues determined that the tiny daughter achieves this blank with its host by absorbing and also utilizing a protein that the host produces when it's about to flower. So all these words are hard, right? But you guys know what hibernation means from biology, prediction, and synchronize. So which word here you think fits the best? Synchronize. Right. And you know that because they said at the same time. Exactly. So synchronization is the word. Very good. Barring. Okay, do you guys know what the word barring means?
Accepting, or like something hard or heavy on you and you're accepting it to bear?
Not in this context, at least, but that's not true. It means if not for. So, if not for major archaeological discoveries, we are unlikely to ever have blank account of ancient Egypt under the female pharaoh, that name, as much of the evidence of her reign was intentionally destroyed by her successors. So, what's going on here? If it was not for major discoveries, right, that were archaeological, we're going to be unlikely to ever have a good idea or information about the ancient Egypt under that female pharaoh. So, what do you guys think about the words that follow?
I don't know, but I think it's C.
Exhaustive, yeah. Do you guys know what that means?
Because all of them don't make sense.
It means complete, right? Yeah, I mean, other words don't fit in here. Questionable. No, we're saying that thanks to those discoveries, we can now have a complete account of information under the reign of female pharaoh, right? Okay, so now only the first five questions are about, words. The rest are different. Some grammar, some comparing texts, some getting the context of things, and so on. Some like, what's the main idea and all that stuff. So let's look at question 6. Jazz tap is a dance form that was first developed in African American communities. Jazz tap was heavily influenced by jazz music, which became widely popular in the US in the 1920s. Tap dancers were inspired by jazz music's quick rhythms. Wait, so on those passages, first, you know, I recommend reading the question just to know what we need to do. Because sometimes they ask you for how is the paragraph structured, and sometimes they ask for the main purpose. Right now, they want the main purpose, which in my idea is in my opinion is harder because you actually have to keep up with what they want. So let's look at it. So jazz tap, of course, you can actually highlight in the exam. Okay, was first developed in the African American communities. It became popular in the U.S. in 1920s, and it continued to develop in 1930s and 1940s. Uh, and next slide. And then jazz tap quickly developed into a dance form that was very different from earlier kinds of tap dance. So that's what's happening here. So take a look at the main choices and let's see which one of them makes sense. Always eliminate two.
It's B.
They never talked about a famous dancer.
It's either A or B, but it's B.
Yeah, you're right. They spend the whole thing discussing how jazz developed over time and changed and all that stuff. You're right. It was not too bad. Okay, now that's going to be a bit hard. They want the structure. So now you're looking for something else. They want the structure. So see how they start and see how they change over time. There is something called the NCP, which is a point at which stars in the northern hemisphere, including the sun, rotate about, which can only be seen at night. Okay. Now, insects and birds were the inspiration for their navigational strategies. From that inspiration, researchers devised a method to locate the NCP. Not in nighttime, but in daytime. Okay? Which happens when atmospheric particles scatter sunlight. Now, there is a special camera called polarimetric camera, which captures images of polarization patterns, which will rotate as the sun's position in the sky changes. Temporal variances across images can then be used to find out the observer's latitude and bearing. Okay, so which of the following is the best description for the overall structure of the text? You want to see how the text developed itself. So if you guys want, take a picture of the paragraph so we can then just focus on the choices. We're good? Scroll. Okay. So you got the question in your phone, and now look at the choices. Any clue so far? Let's read again. So look, insects and birds were mentioned.
Is it C? I was also thinking C.
But they never discussed the difference between how humans and certain animals use the NCP for navigation. Bilakis, they said that the researchers were inspired by how birds and insects are able to use their navigational strategies, and from that, they devised a new method to find NCP in daytime, not only nighttime.
So A. Yeah.
I was thinking more like D.
I didn't even read it.
It mentions the navigational ability of certain animals, which is birds and insects, because insects are animals after all, and inspired a solution to the obstacle. And then how they used an optical device, which is the polarimetric camera. See, you guys lost interest quickly. And that's not good. Now, you lost interest at question 7. You're dead, right? There's like 55 questions, I think, in total in English. So please don't lose interest early on. Now,
these types of questions, I hate them.
yeah, but look, we have a trick because they underlined it. That means they want to know the function of the underline. So focus on, what's happening before it very well to see how that relates to it. Does it go against it? Does it illustrate it? Does it provide an example for it? Evidence, maybe? All these things. So, this story is about a child named John, right? Who was 10 years old and who was puzzling, or basically, let's say, interesting to the people there in the Florida woods. Why? He had a big imagination and he was also able of daydreaming a lot, just like you guys are right now when you guys read this passage. And the river flowed 300 feet from his back door. On the edges of the river, there were multiple plants called palms and also bay trees. And also, this child, John Redding, liked to go down to the edge of the water and he would throw in the water dry twigs and he would watch them sail away downstream to a different city, then to the sea, then to the entire world, and he also wanted to go with them. Yeah. So, based on that, what's the whole point of the underlined sentence? In my opinion, they said that he was a puzzling kid and he was able of imagination and fond of daydreams. And maybe this right here offers the example of how he's doing that on a daily basis with that river.
D.
I think it looks good. Yeah, it looks very good to me. How about C?
It can't be.
Why not?
Because they're not talking about the imagination of other children.
Very good. Very good. And they never say that he wants to leave, do they?
No.
So it's not. Very good. Okay, again, they underline. Go to the question. They want the function of the underlined thing. But now it's harder. Why? Because it's the middle exactly. You must know what's before and also what's after. So, astronomers are confident that the star Betelgeuse will eventually consume all the helium in its core and also explode. Now, but they're going to be less confident about when this explosion is going to happen, since this depends on things that they don't know, which is the internal traits of that star. Now, there is this astrophysicist, right, and her colleagues who investigated whether acoustic waves in the star could be used to know the internal state of the star. But they found out that this method could not be sufficient enough to reveal the internal traits of the star. So basically, they have a problem. They don't know when the explosion of the star is going to happen because they don't know how to understand the internal characteristics of that star. Yeah. Did they try to solve this problem?
No.
They did. They tried to solve it by using acoustic waves,
Oh.
but that did not work either.
So C.
So see, exactly. Right?
I've done such a question before.
Right? I think it was in the SAT.
Yeah. Or
Like the real SAT or
the real one.
the real SAT, because I remember.
Because I remember when I read this, I was like, this is.
how recent was that?
It was
Last
the
exam,
last
yeah.
the last SAT
It was
exam.
the last one.
And in March.
The March one?
Yeah.
We did
Okay.
in March.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
No, we did March.
We didn't do the May one.
Oh, so it's not the recent one. It's the one
Is
before.
there one in August?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
August 27th.
Is that accept? Are you guys grade 12?
Yeah.
No, June is our last
June is
one.
our last one.
So the August one is not taken for the applications. You're sure about that?
Except
When
if
it
some unis
Maybe private
open,
unis, but
yeah.
not public ones.
If some unis open late, they open applications late, it works. As
Yeah.
HMU, last year they accepted August.
Because of the
Yes,
leaks
Because
thingy.
because they opened their like applications too late in September. I think they opened it. Us and the school started in November.
Yeah, third unit started in November.
Okay.
Some of them do start in November normally.
Yeah,
Usually
some are, yeah.
October, November.
Now, question 10, comparing two texts
I hate
can be
this.
very hard. Yep, can be very hard.
Every
So,
single time I get them wrong.
Me too.
well, make sure to highlight.
Can you highlight in the exam?
Yeah, you
Yes.
can. There's like a little button.
No, that's not here.
It's not as easy as this one, but
Yeah. There's a top button that says
It's like you
highlight
select-
and something.
you
and
can
click
actually
on.
select, yeah. You can also take notes, I
Is
think.
it as
And you can
comfortable
eliminate.
as yeah, I know eliminate, but is it comfortable?
As a pencil, probably not, but yani, you have no other choice. Alright, so we got two texts here, right? One starts by discussing the astronomer Mark Holland and his friends who examined white dwarfs, which are what? They're basically remnants of past stars. Why would they examine white dwarfs? To find out the composition of the exoplanets that used to at some point orbit those stars. Now, what did they do? They looked at the wavelengths of light and then sorry, 1 second. So, the team reported that the traces of elements like lithium and sodium support the presence of exoplanets with crest that is similar to the Earth's crest. This is all jargon to you, right? Let's go to text 2. Past studies of white dwarf atmospheres have concluded that certain exoplanets had continental crusts. Okay, which seems a bit similar to the first passage so far. They mentioned those crusts, right? If you guys recall. Now we have another person, right? Actually, two people who argue that those studies unduly. Do you guys know what that means? Like overly. They overly emphasize the atmospheric trace of lithium and other individual elements. You know what this is saying? I feel like this is going opposite to text one.
Yeah, because we're talking about wavelength of the light in the first one.
Oh, I was gonna say that in text one, they are excited to report that lithium and sodium support the presence. But in text two, they're like, wait a minute, these studies overly emphasize those elements' importance. That means that text two is gonna go against text one, it seems like. Okay? The studies don't adequately account. So they're saying they overly emphasize, they also don't adequately account. They're going against it, basically, right? Mm-hmm. And also, they're saying it's possible that we have rock types that are not found on Earth that contain those elements. Okay, so text 2 hates text 1, that's for sure, right? They hate them. So it's gonna be, they all hate them in the choices, but let's just look at how the level. Okay.
D
Um,
or C?
they never talked about wavelength of light in text 2.
Oh, so it's C.
C.
C is perfect. Yeah. It's more like a trick, right? You have to use all your logic to find out the trick here. They talked about elements in both passages. Passage 2 hates passage 1. They said it's inadequate, which means incomplete, right? So yeah. Okay, now it's gonna get easier, I think. The following text from David Barclay Moore's novel, and the narrator has just arrived at a summer camp which is far from his home, saying that this place was different than I thought it would be. I would never have been somewhere like this before. I'd never been actually. I felt scared but also excited. I mean, that's just, yeah, it's super easy. Wow. Let's make sure that's actually, that's like way too easy. Yeah, see, this was actually added in 2022, which means it's going to become easier, I think, over time. That was interesting. The following text is adapted from Oscar Wilde's 1981 novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray. Okay. Dorian Gray is taking the first look at a portrait that Hallward has painted of himself. So he's looking at his own painting, basically, of himself. Now, Dorian passed listlessly, which means I think like without saying any word, in front of his picture and turned toward it. He saw it, he went back, and his cheeks flushed. I think he was happy with it or something. Pleasure, right? He was very happy actually to look at himself in the picture. And yeah, he was like, I guess, the painter is speaking to him, but he's not able to see what he's saying to him. And he was just very, very happy, yeah. He was very happy.
Delighted.
Yeah, he was actually like more than
This was
delighted,
also
probably, right?
questioned.
Hmm?
This was also
Oh.
questioned in this later.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember this one.
I got this one.
You guys get different questions as far
yeah.
as I know. Did the stack get more?
The what?
The stack? Is that the word to use?
Well,
Like
he
the
took
thing
some of them
about-
and put them in the other room.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Okay, we have an artist, a Cherokee artist, who turns punching bags used by boxers into art by decorating them with beadwork and elements of native dressmaking. Okay, so he would decorate punching bags with native elements, right? Like leather fringe and jingles. Um, there's a jingle dance. Okay, and he would basically combine an object of masculinity, like a punching bag, with an art form by women of the most native communities. So, in this way, he is rejecting division of male and female gender roles. Okay.
B.
Is he influenced by any artists? They didn't mention artists in the thingy, did they? No, just him. So probably not B.
Is it C?
He finds inspiration from boxing?
Oh, no.
No, just the punching bag.
I think A.
A, also A.
Yeah, he does, draw on traditional native art form, right? They mentioned native. Yeah. Right? And jingle dance and all that stuff. So, yeah. Right? Okay, we have a novel by Willa Cather in the 1913. In the novel, she portrays Alexandra Bergson as having a deep emotional connection to her natural surroundings. Okay, so she's portraying the character as having a deep emotional connection to her natural surroundings. Which of the following is the best quotation to illustrate that deep connection?
A.
Yeah, it was also C.
Yeah, it's perfect, actually.
This practice though doesn't look like.
It doesn't seem like an SAT.
Yeah, it looks familiar. Some questions. I don't know why.
I think they're
It's my
recycled,
SAT
maybe.
always the hardest.
Hmm?
My SAT is always the hardest. It comes hard
Really?
every single time.
But doesn't the curve change based on that, or?
Yeah, change. The second one is always based on your first one.
I heard if you get easy questions in the second module, that means you're not gonna get more than 1,000, right?
Yeah, it's usually like that. If you do good on module 1, it's better.
Yeah, for me, module 1 is horrible always.
Really?
The questions are this long.
In
Yeah.
module 1?
You see 16?
Yeah.
Add another. Always
No
like
way.
this for me. Always. That's why I get bored.
Well, try not to get bored somehow.
Math is saving me, honestly.
Yeah.
At the math, sometimes they get questions.
No, because seriously, for math, I reach two marks below the 800. My maths. But English?
Wait, you
no.
got 780
Hmm?
in math?
One time, I think so.
Oh, that's very high.
Because in module 1, I think I got it all right. Module 2, I got like a mistake.
Wow.
But I'm not gonna lie, the SAT for me, the math was easy.
SAT math is really easy.
But the English,
Something else, I know.
I barely passed.
The novelist Toni Morrison was the first black woman to work as the editor of the publishing company Random House. Okay, a scholar asserts that one of Morrison's likely aims during her time as the editor was to strengthen the presence of black writers on the list of Random House published authors, which finding, if true, would most strongly support the scholar's claim. The claim was that she was there, her aim was to strengthen the presence of the black writers. It's pretty easy. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. 16. Archaeologist Petra Vaglova, anthropologist, and their colleagues investigated the domestication of farm animals. Do you guys know what that means?
Domestic is like to make them like a family, like
Right, so they live in your, let's say...
with you in the house.
Yeah, basically.
Farm,
Yeah, or the farm, I guess. In China, in the Bronze Age. By analyzing the chemical composition of the bones of sheep, goats, and cattle from the era, the team determined that wild plants made up the bulk of the sheep's and goats' diets. So, wild plants are the ones that are growing outside of your house, obviously. But the cattle's diet consisted largely of millet, which was a crop that was cultivated by humans. So it seems that the cattle was domesticated, right? But the sheep and the goats were not domesticated. Like they lived outside of their, let's say, maybe like house or something. Okay? Like let's say if a dog is domesticated, that means they live in your house. So the cattle was domesticated. Okay, so the cattle was raised closer to the human settlements, but sheep and goats were allowed to roam further away. You will now strongly support the team's conclusion.
See?
I think it's A.
How is that helpful?
Is it A?
It is, yeah. Because basically humans were making millet, which was eaten by the cattle, and now they also found wheat, which was also made by the humans. Yeah. What does cultivated mean?
Like you plant.
You plant or grow. Exactly. In a study of the evolution of two genes, dipt A and dipt B, genes that are encoding antimicrobial peptides that combat pathogens and foster beneficial microbes in fruit flies, researchers assessed a type of fruit fly called Drosophila melanogaster resistance to these pathogenic infections by a specific bacteria that's common in their environment. Subjects of the experiment or the study included flies identified by mutations that silence dipt A, dipt B, or both genes. So basically, here, these are flies with their corresponding genes silenced. That means that those genes are not working. In conjunction with the observation, which means in combination with the observation that resistance to the specific bacteria correlates with the activity of the A gene, but not affected by the activity of the B gene. Data in the graph of survival rates post the infection suggests the following. If we look at the if we look at the graph here, the survival rate is the highest for type A flies, which basically is going to be the highest in flies with A silenced, but B is active. And then if we look at type AB flies or type B flies, as you can see, the resistance has went down. So it seems that if we're talking about flies that have their A gene silenced, okay, those flies will do well. Why? Because the B gene is fine. But if we're talking about type B flies, where the B gene is silenced, so it's no longer working, right? Look at their survival rates. it's basically dropping, right? Look at the white circles dropping. So bad survival rate. The conclusion being what? That survival rate depends on gene B being active, not gene A. So gene B is important, not gene A. So gene B is important to confer resistance or defense against this specific bacteria. Gene A was not good in conferring this resistance. So gene A was not important for this purpose. Okay. Gene A was not important for this purpose. Okay. Again, gene A was not important, only gene B was important, and that's going to be the answer. To 18. So Euphorbia, what? Okay, there's something called a leafy spurge, which is an Eurasian plant that has become invasive in North
This came in
America.
my exam.
The same exact one?
The same exact one. I remember it.
You took it back
They
in March?
recycled
In
everything.
March, yeah, it came.
I think these are questions like after
It's recycled, yeah.
Wow.
Even the second one, by the way. Both
Yeah,
of
this
these.
one I got it.
Yeah.
Does it look the same exact, like same
Exactly.
font and everything?
Everything.
Yeah, exactly same.
Okay. Where it displaces native vegetation and sickens cattle. So right now we're discussing an invasive species in North America that displaces native vegetation and also it sickens cattle. Okay. Now this invasive species can be controlled with chemical herbicides. Okay. But that approach can also kill harmless plants nearby. Recent research on introducing engineered DNA into plant species to inhibit their reproduction may offer a path toward exclusively targeting the invasive species. So now they have a new technique, which is to introduce engineered DNA into plant species to stop their reproduction. That's a good thing because you can only kill them and not kill the other plants. Exactly. Right? No herbicides, only targeting their own DNA. And that's about it. 19. A team of biologists led by two scientists, I guess, investigated the mechanism that allows the thale cress plants to accelerate flowering at high temperatures. They replaced the protein ELF3 in the plants with a similar protein found in other species. So look, right now we're discussing if there's a protein ELF3 that's important for the plants to accelerate flowering under high temperature conditions. Okay. Now, what they did was they replaced the protein with a similar protein that has no ability of acceleration of flowering under increased temperatures. They compared the unmodified ones, which are the ones with the functional ELF3, with the ones that have been changed. And they saw that there was no difference in flowering at 22 Celsius, yet there was difference in flowering at 27 Celsius. Where the ones with the functional ELF3 were able to exhibit accelerated flowering, but the ones that were changed did not exhibit any accelerated flowering. Do you guys see what's happening here? ELF3 is important, but only at 27 Celsius.
Let's see.
Yeah. It allows them to respond to increased temperatures, that it's basically at 27 Celsius. 20.
Grammar. I love grammar.
Okay. Well, I guess take a look at it and let me know what you think.
B.
Wait, do you even read it? Okay. So the Alvarez theory developed in 1980 by the physicist Louis Walter Alvarez and also his son, who was a geologist, maintained that the secondary effects of an asteroid impact caused many dinosaurs and other animals to die out. Okay, so they died out. Okay. Would you put but here or no? I mean, is the second sentence
Should
needing
go
a but?
opposite.
Hmm?
I think if it goes kind of opposite,
It's yeah, it's like a contrast.
I think you do need a word.
We have to have but.
Yeah,
So it's not C
not D.
and it's not D. But do you put the comma or not?
You have to. Conjunction.
Can you explain more?
Because it's an independent sentence or dependent, something like that. I forgot.
Right, so the sentence before the blank
Dependent.
is independent
And then
clause. And the one after it's also independent clause. To connect them with each other, you have to have
comma.
either a period or a semicolon or a conjuncture. I mean, sorry, like a they call them conjunction.
Conjunction, yeah.
Like but, for example, or and, or whatever it is, with a comma. We have to have that comma there. Okay, that's how you connect two independent clauses without using a period, without using a semicolon. Typically, underlines, scribbles, and notes left in the margins by a former owner lower a book's blank value, right? Lower a book's value. Is there a contrast with the first sentence?
No.
Actually, there is. Because look, so those things lower the book's value. However, if the former owner is a famous poet, those markings would actually be a gold mine. So it's a contrast. So you have to have but. Again, the comma is required, right? Because you're also going to be connecting two independent clauses with each other, either a period or a semicolon or a conjunction with a comma. Okay. In winter, the diets of Japanese macaque, which is a monkey, are influenced more by food availability than by food preference. Okay. Although the monkeys prefer to eat vegetation and land-dwelling invertebrates, those food sources may become unavailable because of extensive snow and ice cover.
See.
Forcing the monkey.
Yeah, forcing them. Exactly.
I had this in the exam.
What?
I had it in the
Oh my
exam.
god. While many video game creators strive to make their graphics ever more blank, lifelike, but is there a contrast with the second sentence?
No, they're explaining more.
Right, because while means there's a contrast to begin with. So you cannot use another contrast, and you cannot use but again because you already have a contrast.
See.
Yes, because you are connecting. Incorrect.
No, wait. Because there's because and while and those.
You're connecting dependent with. You have to use a comma if there is no conjunction. Okay. Food and the sensation of taste are central to Monique Truing's novels. In The Book of Salt, for example, the exiled character of Bean connects to his native Saigon through the food he prepares, while in Bitter in the Mouth, the character of Linda. See, right? Because here's is present tense. You must also have present tense.
It's all present tense also.
Yeah. Very good. 25. Along the carbon dioxide concentration and temperature, light intensity affects the chemical reaction rate of
Photosynthesis. And.
No, I don't think you need that.
No, not and.
B. C.
C.
I remember
because
this.
you're explaining how the effect on the chemical reaction of photosynthesis is happening. You're explaining it, you're defining it. Okay. 26. In Marisol's 1968 sculpture, gone are the types of pop culture references that made the Parisian-born Venezuelan American artist a star at the height of the pop art movement. In blank place.
In their place.
How do you know it's there?
Because they're people.
Why not it's?
Because it's pop culture references. It's a reference.
Right, the references. Exactly. So there is for the references. That's right. 27. The ghazal, a poetic form originating in the 7th century Arabic poetry, has an intricate structure. The 20th century Kashmiri American poet explains that each one of the ghazal's couplets. What's happening here? Okay. Each of the ghazal's couplets. Each one. Each one.
It's is.
It has to be is, right? Because each one is. Check though. 27. Yeah. Organisms have evolved a number of surprising adaptations to ensure their survival in adverse, which means bad conditions. Tadpole shrimp embryos.
B.
Yeah, it's an example of what they just talked about, right? For example, when Chinese director Chloe Zhou accepted the Oscar in 2021 for her film Nomadland, she made Academy Award history. Blank, only one other woman, Catherine of the US, had been named Best Director of the Oscars. Previously, exactly. Exactly. If the formation of Earth's mantle had been purely a product of core differentiation, whereby heavier elements sink toward the core and lighter elements rise, the upper mantle would be depleted of heavy siderophile elements. Siderophiles are much more abundant in the mantle than predicted in that model, however. There's a contrast.
That said.
For example, it doesn't work.
I see that
Likewise.
said as well.
Wait, extraterrestrial material containing siderophiles likely from asteroid or comet impacts almost certainly accelerate to Earth. Accrete to Earth.
It's either A or D. Or it could be B.
That said, what would be that said? I guess that said, right? There's no other thing.
I think it's
Either A or B.
because it's like referring to the thing before.
Let's check.
I'm not sure.
Hence,
Yeah.
Why is it not A?
A is incorrect because that said logically signals that the information in this sentence regarding extraterrestrial material is an exception to the previous information. That says for an exception. But hence,
Conclusion.
yeah. Yeah, it's like, it's just like, like further confirming it, let's say.
So where did they talk about extra material?
Extraterrestrial?
How can they form a conclusion if they have not talked about it before?
Oh, well, look, you know what they're saying here? So in the beginning, they said that, if the logic is correct, that the heavier metals elements sink toward and the lighter ones rise up, then the mantle would only have lighter elements. But it seems that it's not true. It seems that the mantle has lots of heavy elements. So there's like a reason for that to happen, which is what? which is materials from the outside world is coming to Earth from like an asteroid or something. It's like a conclusion, it's like why that's happening. So hence. 31. While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. Okay, so these, yeah,
So easy. This one came in my
same one?
Yeah.
They tend to be easy, right? So in 2013, we got archaeologists studying cat bone fragments, and the fragments were estimated to be 5,300 years old. Chemical analysis of the fragments revealed that the cats had consumed large amounts of grain. The grain consumption was evidence that the cats may have been domesticated. That means they lived inside the house. The student wants to present the study and its conclusions.
B.
Yeah. The study and also the conclusions. That's right.
So usually I just read the things. I don't read the top part. And I get them correct.
Really?
Yeah. And only when I get confused, like I go back to the thing and I make sure that's it.
But you have to read the question because sometimes they ask the opposite, like which one does not.
No, I read this and then I start solving without reading these bullet points.
Why?
I don't know. I
always
don't
read
need it.
them.
No, I always read them.
Or I read the ending of them. I don't read the
Yeah.
beginning. I read like the cats consume large amounts of grains. I don't read the beginning.
I don't know.
All right. While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. Gaspar Enriquez is an artist. He specializes in portraits of Mexican Americans. A portrait is an artistic representation of a person. Enriquez completed a painting of the sculptor Luis Jimenez in 2003. He also completed a drawing of the writer in 2016. The student wants to emphasize the difference between the two portraits.
C.
See?
Oh,
The
no, never
difference.
mind the difference. Yeah.
Wait. So we have a portrait.
I think D.
Wait, he completed a painting versus a drawing, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are two different things, probably.
Is it where are they from?
I mean, the one is a painting and one is a drawing, right? So it should be C.
See,
Right?
yeah.
It should be.
Oh, good, I guessed it.
Was I even there when you looked at C? I
No,
hadn't
the minute
scrolled
you
down.
went down, I was like, it's C.
Alright. While researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. The Gula are a group of African Americans who have lived in parts of the southeastern U.S. since the 18th century. Gula culture is influenced by the West African and Central African traditions. Okay. Now, Lewis Miller Cohen is a Gula historian, storyteller, and preservationist. She founded the Gula Museum of Hilton Head Island. Okay, so right now we're discussing two people, right? We have Lewis Miller Cohen and Vermale Rodriguez. Yeah, they founded museums, but in different places. One in, Carolina, but they're both Carolina, but you guys get the idea, right?
Yeah.
One is the Hilton Head Island, and one is the Georgetown one. The student wants to emphasize the duration and the purpose of the work. Duration and purpose.
Yeah, anytime.
Time and the reason. Nothing about that in A, right?
C.
Yeah. To preserve, that's the aim. Duration since 2003.